Book of Judges, was it written before the kings, during the kings, or after the kings, after all the kings? Mostly before. And how about some during at least? During at least. And the way we know this is there's scripture that tells us that at that time there was no king. And so that tells us that at least some of it had to have been written during the times of the kings. And even as we see these throughout Judges, when it tells us a few times that there was no king, okay, it's almost like the writer is telling us that it was good when there was a king. Like it's good right now. And so we're talking about at a time when it wasn't good. Now we know when we read about Saul, King Saul, that things were good for a while, right? And then it kind of turned and it started going downhill. So you may think that this was written, and commentaries will say that it was written possibly during the time of King Saul when things were going well. Because they were saying, hey, look at what's happening. Look at what happened in the book of Judges. That's not how they're saying it, but look at what happened back then, and there was no king. So they're saying now is a good time. Okay. Judges, the book of Judges, starting with chapter 17 through the end of the book, is that transition period time from Judges to Kings. And that's when we start seeing, as we're talking about right now, some falling away, some corruption, some idolatry coming into the Israelites. It's something they've fought, many a times, but that they're fighting here. And so this is the transition period. Okay, so verses 1 through 6 of chapter 17 was Micah and the Levite. And we talked about a portion of that with Micah, not knowing who Micah is, other than he is an Israelite. It is not Micah the prophet. And then we also learn about his mother, and that he stole silver from his mother. And she got angry, as any mother, I think, would do if somebody stole something from them. I think any guy would do that too if we have someone stealing from us. And she basically got angry and started saying, if I ever find this person, let me tell you, this is what I'm going to do. I curse this person. And for whatever reason, her son decided to admit what he did and gave back the silver. She dedicated all of that silver to the Lord. At least that's what she said. How much did she actually dedicate to the Lord? From what I can read. 200 shekels out of how many? 1,100. Only 200 did she take to the what was it, the metalsmith, to have the idol made. So one, she made a dedication, and then she broke that dedication really quickly. Okay, and they made, out of the 200 pieces of silver, they made an idol. Okay, and we talked about how there was a commandment broken, right? First commandment, I think we said, and second commandment, I think we said, right? Yeah, shall have no other God and no idols. So we were looking at these Israelite people that, one, he stole. Okay, he sinned. We all have sinned, right? I can't say that he's any worse than I am, because we've all sinned. We've all done bad things. And then they sinned. She sinned by dedicating all of it, but then only giving a portion of that. We saw an example like that in the New Testament as well, did we not? What story was that about? What's that? Yes, about the property that they sold, right? And didn't give all the money. And what happened to them? They didn't survive very long, did they? They didn't survive very long. Okay, so they broke the commandment there, and that's where we left off at, was verses 1 through 3. So then verse 4, and 5. I'll go ahead and read verses 4 and 5. So it says, "So when he restored the money to his mother took 200 pieces of silver and gave it to the silversmith, who made it into a carved image and a metal image, and it was in the house of Micah. And the man Micah had a shrine, and he made an ephod and household gods, and ordained one of his sons, who became his priest." So I want to stop there. So already kind of hit upon these things that, creating these idols, they have these household gods. Is that something that an Israelite was supposed to do? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They're falling away. And then the latter half of verse 5 said that Micah ordained one of his sons who became a priest. Now, what tribe was made up of priests? The Levites, right? The Levites. We don't see here that they are priests or that they are Levites. Okay? So, therefore, they would not be able to create a priest, okay? And let alone ordain any individual as a priest. That's not the way that worked back in those times. A Levite was a Levite all of their life, assuming the genealogy was correct, that they didn't marry outside of the Levites. And the Levite, as a young person, could not be a priest until they hit a certain age, at which time they did become a priest. It was like their duty, okay? That was what God said the Levites were to do. And so here, you're not really looking at ordaining anybody because they're not a Levite. But this is what he's doing. He wants a priest all of his own. And in verse 6, it says, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes." Okay, so we talked about the time of the kings and why this might be written on paper here was to explain to us, to give us a clue that some of this was written during the time of the kings. And everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Do we run into trouble with that sometimes? We think sometimes maybe we know what's right and we know what's wrong. If you're any imperfect like I am, sometimes I try to justify my sin. I try to justify something that I read in Scripture, and I try to twist it and say that, oh, it really doesn't say this. Why do I do that? Okay, I do that because I know the Bible's right and I'm wrong, but I'm not ready to give that up. Okay, and so that's what we're seeing here as well, is everyone did what was right in their own eyes. I mean, they had the law. The law has been given to them. But when we start to lose someone or some people to hold us accountable, then we may start to fall away. Here, this is a time where the judges were over, okay? And so there's no more judges, and this is before the kings come into play. So they don't have anyone watching over them and maybe pointing out what you're doing wrong. Okay? We, if I want to bring it to today with all of us, okay, each one of us are priests, right? According to Scripture. So each one of us should be helping each other, right? If I'm sinning, I hope you would tell me. I know as human beings we often talk behind each other's backs, but we shouldn't do that, right? We should talk to the person and say, hey, what you're doing isn't right. And so I would say that for me. If there's something I'm doing wrong, please tell me. I may not like it, but if it's the truth, I got to accept it, right? And that's what we all need to do. I'm going to run out of here really quick tonight so that nobody hits me up and picks on me. Corey, you're doing this wrong. No, I would appreciate it. I really do. Okay. So let's go on to verses 7 through 13. Would somebody like to read 7 through 13 through the end of the chapter? I'll tell you what, let's back up and just do 7 and 8, verses 7 and 8.
And there was a young man out of Bethlehem, Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite, and he sojourned there. And the man departed out of the city from Bethlehem, Judah, to sojourn where he could find a place. And he came to Mount Ephraim, to the house of Micah, as he journeyed.
Okay, so looking there at the beginning of verse 7, a young man, I want you to remember that. That's going to be very important here in a little while, okay? A young man. And of Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite, and he sojourned there. Okay? So, just because it says of the family of Judah, and right after that says who was a Levite. Okay? You can't be both if you ever want to become a priest. And we're going to find out that this young man, this Levite, is ordained by Micah here shortly to become a priest. Okay? So, in order for this young man to become a priest, he has to, through genealogy, be a Levite. His father has to be a Levite. His mother has to be a Levite. Now, I've read some commentary that would say that that maybe his mother was of the family of Judah, and that's why they're calling him as of the family of Judah. However, I want you to take a look at the last part of verse 7 when it says, and he sojourned there. That means he stayed there for a while. And sometimes if you stay somewhere for a while, and the longer you stay there, the more you kind of become like family, become one of them, right? We're having a yard sale at our house the last couple days, and we had this couple that came last night and bought up all this stuff, and they came back tonight and bought up all this stuff, and they're talking about coming back Friday when we do the yard sale again. And I told the guy, I said, I'll tell you, and I know where he's from, Hazen area, but I told him, I said, if you keep coming back, I'm going to have to call you neighbor pretty soon because he just keeps on coming. And he's like, and are you doing this next week? Because he says he runs out of money and he has to go get some more money and bring it back. That's what he said last night, and then they did come back with more money. So if he keeps coming back and keeps coming back, I'm going to start saying, hey, you're family or you're my neighbor, because you just keep coming. And so this gentleman, this young man who has sojourned there for a period of time, we don't know how long, but he's been staying there for a period of time, very well, they could just be saying that he is of the family of Judah. Because what makes it clear for me is it says who was a Levite, though. Okay? So, verse 8, and the man departed from the town of Bethlehem and Judah to sojourn where he could find a place, and as he journeyed, he came to the hill country of Ephraim to the house of Micah. So he's a sojourner. He's someone that travels around and stays somewhere. And now, for whatever reason, he's leaving that place and looking for another place, looking for someone that's going to take care of him, or that he can live, I should say, and that where he could live. Okay? This Levite, we'll find out who he might be later on, okay? And I don't want to go there yet, okay? Where we're at right now in Scripture, we got to wonder, who is he? And why is he living where he's at? Because he's actually not in one of the Levitical cities. How many, and this is a number you may not know, how many Levitical cities were there? 6, good guess. Take that times 8. 8 times 6 is 48. 48 cities. Let's go first to Joshua chapter 21. And in Joshua chapter 21, trying to find, I was in the wrong place right there. Okay. I am going to go on and I am going to read all of Joshua 21. Okay? And I'm going to read it instead of making anyone else read it, because there are a lot of cities named in here. And I'll be the one to take on all the hard words, okay? I won't make anyone else take on the hard words, okay? So I'm going to start with verse 7. So they set apart Kadesh in Galilee. Nope, sorry, I went back to chapter 20 again. Chapter 21, verse 1. Then the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites came to Eleazar the priest and to Joshua the son of Nun and to the heads of the fathers' houses of the tribes of the people of Israel. And they said to them at Shiloh in the land of Canaan, the Lord commanded through Moses that we be given cities to dwell in, along with their pasture lands for our livestock. So by command of the Lord, the people of Israel gave to the Levites the following cities and pasture lands out of their inheritance. Okay, this is the cities that the Levites are going to receive to live in. Now, going back to chapter 18, where did this Levite live, sojourn, and he was leaving? What town was that? Was that Bethlehem? Yeah. So when I am reading, let's listen for the word Bethlehem and see that he did not live in that city, in a Levite city. Okay, verse 4. The lot came out for the clans of the Kohathites, so those Levites who were descendants of Aaron, the priest, received a lot from the tribes of Judah, Simeon, and Benjamin, 13 cities. And the rest of the Kohathites received by lot from the clans of the tribe of Ephraim, from the tribe of Dan, and half the tribe of Manasseh, 10 cities. The Gershonites received by lot from the clans of the tribe of Issachar, from the tribe of Asher, from the tribe of Naphtali, and from the half-tribe of Manasseh in Bashan, 13 cities. The Maronites, according to their clans, received from the tribe of Reuben, the tribe of Gad, and the tribe of Zebulun, 12 cities. And I was thinking, if anyone else wants to read, just speak up and I'll let you read these cities when we get to them here, okay? I'm more than glad to pass it off. We're almost there. These cities and their pasture lands the people of Israel gave by lot to the Levites as the Lord commanded through Moses. Out of the tribe of the people of Judah and the tribe of the people of Simeon, they gave the following cities mentioned by name, which went to the descendants of Aaron, one of the clans of the Kohathites, who belonged to the people of Levi, since the lot fell to them first. They gave them Kiriath Arba, Arba being the father of Anak, that is Hebron, in the hill country of Judah, along with the pasture lands around it. But the fields of the city and its villages had been given to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, as his possession. Okay, now here's where we're going to rattle off a bunch of cities. This next few verses will be 9 cities. And to the descendants of Aaron, the priest, they gave Hebron, the city of refuge for the manslayer with its pasture lands, Libnah with its pasture lands, Jeter with its pasture lands, Eshtemoa with its pasture lands, Holon with its pasture lands, Debir with its pasture lands, Ain with its pasture lands, Juttah with its pasture lands, Beth Shemesh with its pasture lands, 9 cities out of these 2 tribes, 10 out of the tribe of Benjamin. So that's only 9. We got a ways to go, okay? And you might be like, Corey, why are you reading all these? Why are you going to go through all these? I'm going to go through them all because they're important. If they're in God's Word, they're important for a reason. And we'll when we get to chapter 18, we're going to see that there's another town that is very important to God that was taken over by the tribe of Dan. And I'll point that out when the time comes. Let's continue on. Four more cities here. Gibeon with its pasture lands, Geba with its pasture lands, Anathoth with its pasture lands, and Almon with its pasture lands, 4 cities. The cities of the descendants of Aaron, the priests, were in all 13 cities with their pasture lands. So there's the 13 cities that was mentioned in general back in verse 4. Okay? Now, in verse 5 of Joshua 21, we're going to read about those 10 cities. Verse 20. As to the rest of the Kohathites belonging to the Kohathite clans of the Levites, the cities allotted to them were out of the tribe of Ephraim. To them were given Shechem, the city of refuge for the manslayer, with its pasture lands in the hill country of Ephraim, Gezer with its pasture lands, Kibzaim with its pasture lands, Beth Horon with its pasture lands. That's 4 cities. And then out of the tribe of Dan, Eltech with its pasture lands, Gibbethon with its pasture lands, Ajalon with its pasture lands, Gath-Rimmon with its pasture lands, 4 cities. And out of the half tribe of Manasseh, here comes 2 more. 4, okay, I can do 2 more fingers, right? Tanekh with its pasture lands, and Gath Rimmon with its pasture lands, 2 cities. The cities of the clans of the rest of the Kohathites were 10 in all with their pasture lands. We're almost there. We're getting halfway there. Okay? The next section, if we went back to verse 6 ends telling us in general about 13 cities. So verse 27, and to the Gershonites, one of the clans of the Levites, were given out of the half-tribe of Manasseh, Golan in Bashan with its pasture lands, the city of refuge for the manslayer, and Beshtera with its pasture lands, 2 cities. And out of the tribe of Issachar, Kishion with its pasture lands, Daberath with its pasture lands, Jarmuth with its pasture lands, and Genem with its pasture lands, 4 cities. And out of the, so that was 4 cities, okay, 4 more. And out of the tribe of Asher, Mishal with its pasture lands, Abdon with its pasture lands, Helkath with its pasture lands, and Rehob with its pasture lands, 4 cities. Here's 3 more. And out of the tribe of Naphtali, Kadesh in Galilee with its pasture lands, the city of refuge for the manslayer, Hamath Dor with its pasture lands, and Carton with its pasture lands, 3 cities. The cities of the several clans of the Gershonites were in all 13 cities with their pasture lands. Last but not least, we have 12 more cities. 12 more cities. And to the rest of the Levites, the Merarite clans were given out of the tribe of Zebulun, Jokdeam with its pasture lands, Kartah with its pasture lands, Dimnah with its pasture lands, Nahalal with its pasture lands. That's 4 cities. And out of the tribe of Reuben there was Bezer with its pasture lands, Jahaz with its pasture lands, Kedemoth with its pasture lands, and Mephath with its pasture lands. That's 4 more cities. And out of the tribe of Gad, Ramoth and Gilead with its pasture lands, the city of refuge for the manslayer, Mahanaim with its pasture lands, Heshbon with its pasture lands, and Jazer with its pasture lands, 4 cities in all. As for the cities of the several Merarite clans, that is, the remainder of the clans of the Levites, those allotted to them were in all 12 cities. So I was able to follow along with that easily because I marked my page up, in detail. So I saw then, each city how they were given how many, or each clan how they were given how many of them. Again, it's important. When I was teaching the teenagers and going over names like this in Joshua, they laughed a lot when they read these words because they're hard to pronounce, right? And I try to instill upon them that when they read one of these names that's hard to say, to just go through it. Don't pause. Don't act like you don't admit that you made the mistake. Because I probably did as good as anyone else in pronouncing these, and I'm sure I did not pronounce these names the way they're supposed to be pronounced, and that's okay. That's okay. God put them there for a reason. He wanted us to see these towns, and one such reason that I think that He gave us these cities is so that when we are studying Judges chapter 17, and we see where this Levite lived, we see that he did not live in a city that was given to him. Okay? That was given to his clan. He was not, so that's why they say he's sojourning, is because he was not in that city where he's in any of the cities where he's supposed to be. Any questions? Okay. Let's take a look at verses 9 through 13. Would someone like to read verses 9 through 13?
And Micah said unto him, Whence comest thou? And he said unto him, I am a Levite of Bethlehem, Judah, and I go to sojourn where I may find a place. And Micah said unto him, Dwell with me, and be unto me a father and a priest, and I will give thee 10 shekels of silver by the year, and a suit of apparel, and thy victuals. So the Levite went in. And the Levite was content to dwell with the man, and the young man was unto him as one of his sons. And Micah consecrated the Levite, and the young man became his priest, and was in the house of Micah. Then said Micah, Now know I that the Lord will do me good, seeing I have a Levite to my priest.
Okay. So, as we already mentioned, the Levite was leaving where he sojourned, looking for another place to sojourn, and Micah asks him, who he was. He says, I'm a Levite of Bethlehem in Judah, and I'm going to sojourn where I may find a place. And then we see where Micah wants to make and did make this Levite a priest. Okay, Micah was probably pretty excited, like, wow, I got a Levite here, okay? I can have a priest, and he's going to ordain him a priest. I'm going to say Micah doesn't have the ability to ordain him as a priest. And even if he did, because that's not scriptural, so even if he did, Micah has really fallen away from God, though. Remember, he's now into idolatry, okay? He now has made idols, and he has, house gods, okay, in his house. And therefore, even if he does have the right to make him a priest, he's sinning. He's just way out there sinning, okay? The other one which I mentioned, and we see here that he's young, okay, is again, if he's young, is he even old enough to be a Levite? He may not even be old enough to be a Levite yet. Or not a Levite, he's always a Levite. He was born. He may not be old enough to be a priest, okay? All Levites, again, they're being born as a Levite, you were to serve God in a certain way, okay? And then, but you couldn't be that priest until you reached a certain age, okay? So, seeing that we're told that he's young, I just got to question whether he's even old enough. The other thing is, this Levite, we see here that he was paid with silver. What verse is that? Verse 10. Verse 10 says, And Micah said to him, Stay with me and be to me a father and a priest, and I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year, and a suit of clothes, and your living. And the Levite went in, meaning the Levite accepted. Okay? So, some of what I read was that 10 pieces of silver was like low pay for someone at that time for a year. I'm not sure. That was a commentary that I read. But my question is, and I'll ask you, is if you were a Levite, how were you to be paid? How did you survive, if I want to say it that way? How did you survive?
The Lord provided.
Other tribes were, yeah.
From a 1/10, right? From a tithe. From a tithe, yeah. Does this sound like a tithe to you? I will pay you 10 pieces of silver a year, and I will give you clothing, and I will give you some for your living, like for your food and such. It does not sound like a tithe. Keep where you're at, because of course we'll come back to that, but let's go to Numbers chapter 18. We're going to take a look at this tithing so that we can connect this for those that may not be familiar. And chapter 18 is a great chapter to read about the duties of priests and Levites, but I'm not going to read or have you read all 32 verses out of chapter 18. So let's just take a look at verses 21 through 24. And if anyone would read that for me, that would be wonderful.
Behold, I have given the children of Levi all the troops in Israel for an inheritance for their service, which they serve, even the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. Neither must the children of Israel henceforth come nigh the tabernacle of the congregation, lest they bear sin and die. But the Levites shall do the service of the tabernacle of the congregation, and they shall bear their iniquity. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, that among the children of Israel they have no inheritance. But the tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer as an heave offering to the Lord, I have given unto the Levites to inherit. Therefore I have said unto them, among the children of Israel they shall have no inheritance.
Okay. So that's a real brief summary of that entire chapter, okay? The Levites were not given a great big piece of land like the other clans were. They were given cities within the other clans' properties, if you want to say. And they were to receive from the tithes of the people of Israel, which they present as a contribution to the Lord. That's how they were to survive. And those tithes would be cattle, fruit, grains, olive oil, wine, different tithes that they were allowed to give. That was a portion to be given to the Levites. Now, the Levites didn't get to keep all that though, okay? That wasn't like they didn't get to go like this and just take all and everyone else's tithes and keep it. They then had to contribute out of that tithe. They then had to contribute to the Lord. So what they received from their brothers and sisters, their Israelite, other Israelite clans, they got a portion of it, but then they had to give a portion of that to the Lord as well. Okay, let's look at verse 13 in Judges chapter 17, I think we're at, right? Then Micah said, "Now I know that the Lord will prosper me because I have a Levite as a priest." He's pretty excited, okay? He thinks that because there's a Levite living with him and because he's paying him to be a priest and ordaining him as a priest, that he's going to be blessed by God. I'm going to disagree with that. I mean, I agree with what's written there, okay? But I don't think he's going to be blessed when he's doing it all wrong, okay? Sometimes I got to think about the way other religious organizations might operate, and even we can fall into this, okay? Is if we're not following God's word and doing what his will is for us. And that's what's happening here as well. And here, we're going to see that Micah in chapter 18 is going to lose his priest, okay? And he's going to be without a priest. He's going to be without his made-up gods and without his idol. And that can happen to the Lord's church as well. If we fall away from God, we may not be blessed. We may end up suffering. Any questions? That is 17. Okay, I'm going to keep going here just a little bit longer. So going on to Judges chapter 18. I always seem to flow over into the next chapter. So verse 1, I'll go ahead and read verse 1. And the idea of this chapter here is that the Danites, the tribe of Dan, takes the Levite and the idol. Verse 1 says, "In those days there were no king in Israel." We've heard that before, right? "And in those days the tribe of the people of Dan was seeking for itself an inheritance to dwell in, for until then no inheritance among the tribes of Israel had fallen to them." Okay, let's back up and read that again, but let's go slower, okay? The first sentence, pretty clear. In those days there was no king in Israel, and we've already covered that. Next sentence, "And in those days the tribe of the people of Dan," pay attention right here, "was seeking for itself an inheritance to dwell in." They were seeking for themselves an inheritance to dwell in. Did the tribe of Dan not get land? Apparently not. That's what it says, right? That's what it says. Let's take a look at Joshua chapter 19. Joshua chapter 19. I think I'll take this one because there's some big words in here again, so I'll be the one to mess it all up and butcher it, okay? Verses 40 through 48. 40 through 48 of Joshua chapter 19, talking about the inheritance of Dan, or for Dan. The seventh lot, so there was the seventh lot right there, came out for the tribe of the people of Dan, according to their clans, and the territory of its inheritance, They did inherit something. And the territory of its inheritance included Zorah, Eshtaol, Urshemesh, Shalabin, Ajalon, Ithla, Elon, Timnah, Ekron, Eltekah, Gibbethon, Belath, Jehud, Beneth Barak, Gath-Rimmon, and, I'm not done yet, verse 46, Mejarkin and Rakan with the territory over against Joppa. When the territory of the people of Dan was lost to them, the people of Dan went up and fought against Leshem. Let's stop right there. Let's not go into 47, okay? So 40 through 46 tells us they did receive an inheritance. However, we have back in Judges, the first verse that says, and in those days the tribe of the people of Dan was seeking for itself an inheritance to dwell in. For until then, no inheritance among the tribes of Israel had fallen to them. So, the key word here in the first verse of chapter 18 of Judges is they were seeking for themselves. But remember that when they were to receive the inheritance, the cities, the land that was to be theirs, God would go in and drive the people out before them, before they even got there. God would go in and drive them out. Okay? So, why in verse 1 of chapter 18, why would they have to seek for itself, the tribe, them seek for themselves, an inheritance to dwell in? And why would they say, for until then no inheritance among the tribe of Israel had fallen to them? That's another key. Something happened right there that they were not getting that inheritance that God was giving them. There's a reason there that we need to dig a little deeper into. Let's go to Joshua chapter 19, verse 47, which I read part of it and then stopped. It says, when the territory of the people of Dan was lost to them, the people of Dan went up and fought against Leshem, and after capturing it and striking it with the sword, they took possession of it and settled in it, calling Leshem Dan, after the name of Dan their ancestor. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the people of Dan, according to their clans, these cities with their villages. Let's take a look, because I think we have a couple more minutes. Let's take a look at Joshua chapter 23. And this might give us an idea as to why they're losing the inheritance that was given to them. Okay? And I'll go ahead and read that, and then we'll come back and review this next week. Chapter 23, verses 1 through 13. A long time afterward, when the Lord has given rest to Israel from all their surrounding enemies, and Joshua was old and well advanced in years, Joshua summoned all Israel, its elders and heads, its judges and officers, and said to them, I am now old and well advanced in years, and you have seen all that the Lord your God has done to all these nations for your sake, for it is God, the Lord your God who has fought for you. Behold, I have allotted to you as an inheritance for your tribes those nations that remain, along with all the nations that I have already cut off from the Jordan to the great sea in the west. The Lord your God will push them back before you and drive them out of your sight, and you shall possess their land just as the Lord your God promised you. Therefore be strong to keep and do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, turning aside. Now this is important, these things here, because if you don't do it, this is what happens, okay? Turning aside from it neither to the right hand nor to the left, that you may not mix with these nations remaining among you, or make mention of the names of their gods, or swear by them, or serve them, or bow down to them. But you shall cling to the Lord your God, just as you have done to this day, for the Lord has driven out before you great and strong nations. We'll just go ahead and stop right there. That covers a lot, and we'll cover it. We'll cover next week and review it. But that's like the warning: is if you do this, the Lord won't be on your side, and that's where Dan's leading to, the tribe of Dan. Thank you.